Okay, just put a link there, hit publish, and done! Alright, another Persona 5 theory video in the bag. Now I can just sit back, relax, and wait for the next... There has been a leak. A leak about new info on Persona 5. I'm sure it's nothing big. I'm sure it's nothing I need to talk about. I don't need to make another video. No, I don't need to. I don't need to make another video. 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 I need to make another video! Yes, hello everyone, I'm back with even more Persona news because just like in Inaba, when it rains, it pours. I just got done with my analysis of the third Persona 5 trailer, and as I mentioned in that video, there had been a large leak of new information on the game. Well, I'm here today to give you my rundown of that news as well as some new theories that this leak has caused to spring up. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. First thing we have to talk about is that we have finally gotten some background on who this mysterious fifth member of your team is. We haven't seen much of him so far, just one quick cutscene, and if you squint real closely at just the right moment, then you can actually see him running with the rest of your party, but that's about it. But that doesn't mean he's not going to play an important part in the story. His name is Yusuke Kitagawa, and he has a painting scholarship to a different school than the rest of your party, and it mentions that he is a live-in disciple to his mentor slash landlord, Madarame. The leak also mentions that he would tie into the structure of the story, and what I mean by this is that unlike the previous Persona games where you had one goal in mind that you were constantly striving towards, whether it be catching the killer in Persona 4 or reaching the top of Tartarus in Persona 3, this game would have more of a quote-unquote omnibus structure where it would have multiple villains and targets for our protagonist to chase after with no real connection to each other. Now, what does this mean? Well, as I said, it means that you'll have multiple villains to go after, but imagine it sort of like an American superhero. If Spider-Man is going after Venom one week and then the Green Goblin the next, it doesn't mean that those two villains are connected, it just means that they're the characters that he is after that week. So who are the villains going to be? Well, here comes the first big theory of the night. In the first trailer of the game, there's a moment where several words race across the screen. These words are actually the Latin translations for the 7 deadly sins, as well as 2 additional words, cavum and erratum. By the way, I apologize because I know that I will be butchering all of these, but cavum and erratum basically mean hollow and vanity respectively. My theory is that each of these big bosses you'll face in the game are all themed around these sins. Want some proof? Well, we see one quick glimpse of one of the bosses during their transformation, and at his feet it is covered with money. And then after he transforms, he's holding food. Clearly, this boss is going to be Avaricia or Gula, which roughly translates to greed and gluttony respectively. Now, the leak mentioned that Yusuke would tie into this omnibus style story. So, the big question is, how will he tie into this story? Well, as I said, he is living under his mentor and landlord, which has to be a lot of pressure, and in comparison to the other characters, he's far more proper and emotionless, which could be the result of a very strict upbringing. So could it possibly be that his mentor will be one of these sins? Perhaps vanity or pride, a sin that would urge someone to force their protege to be perfect? I know that as of right now that theory might seem a little bit far-fetched, but I've got a pretty strong gut feeling on this one, so I'm going to be keeping my eye out for any more info on this mysterious mentor. Now, the next big reveal that we got in the last trailer was that we finally got to see the characters' personas, but we had no idea who they were. I guess that Morgana's was going to be Zoro because, well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, he makes the freaking Z when he comes out. But this leak finally revealed the rest of them, and Zoro turned out to be correct, but we also got to learn that Ryuji's is Captain Kidd, a famous pirate who is probably most known for the legends about his buried treasure existing all around the world. Then there's Anne's, who is Carmen, a gypsy from the opera of the same name. Yusuke's will be Goemon, who is basically the Japanese version of Robin Hood. And of course, we already know that the protagonist is Arsene, which is a reference to Arsène Lupin, a famous thief from French literature, whose grandson is also a famous anime character of the same name. Now, we see Carmen using fire, so it's a pretty safe guess she's going to be our Aggie user. Captain Kidd is surrounded by a blue aura, so if I had to take a guess, he's probably the Bufu user. Zoro strikes quickly with his blade, causing white energy to form into his trademark Z's, so my money is on him being the Zio user. And we see Goemon blow several enemies back with his powers, so it looks like he might be the Garu user. But Yusuke is dressed primarily in white and black, so I don't think it would also be a stretch to say that he could be your light and dark user, specifying in Hama and Mudo spells. And as for Arsene, right now I think it's a little bit too early to guess at what his power is going to be, but based on all of the red in his design, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that he's going to be an Agi user as well. Now, moving on to the story, we had confirmed that the plot of this game is going to revolve around the search for the origin behind the Izukinabi or the Otherworld Navi phone app, which is what allows our characters to enter into palaces, which confirms my theory from the previous video that there will be some other person out there in the human world who has access to the world of personas. Now in that last video, I pointed out that clearly you have to have someone who is on your side who is guiding you through this persona world, but hearing this news, it implies that there might be someone villainous in the human world who is also trying to tamper with the persona realm. Also, now that it's been confirmed that this phone app is connected directly to the palaces, one quick other thing that I just happened to notice while I was going back and reviewing all the other trailers, which is kind of what I do with all my free time now these days. But if we go back and look at that very first teaser trailer that they put out for Persona 5, there is a moment in which the protagonist is walking down the street looking at his phone as if following directions from something, and then suddenly everyone around him just freezes. Now that we have this new information, I think it's pretty clear that he is actually looking at this app that we're talking about, and it is guiding him to the first palace. I think that this cutscene that we saw will be the cutscene that they show when you find the first palace in the game. Now, that's about it for new information that we got, but there were a few clarifications that delve deeper into the backstories of these characters. For starters, we learned that Ryuji doesn't just look like the bad boy, but he actually is considered a bad influence on the protagonist. Now, throughout all of my Persona theory videos, I've said that it really looks like these characters might be villains, and this would indeed be a point for that argument. However, they also say that this story will be a story of social reform and atonement. Now, I talked about the social reform part of the story in my last video, which the link for that is right here. Go ahead and click on it. Thank you. But as for the atonement part, that seems to imply that Ryuji will change throughout the story and learn the error of his ways. But Ryuji isn't the only character we get a clarification on. We also learned a little bit more about Anne. Now, we already got a backstory on her in the last video I did, but this leak points out one more thing of interest, which is that she is, quote, restrained in her daily life and feels that she has lost her place in the world, but as a phantom thief, she is much more lively and energetic. Now, again, in the last trailer, it really did look like out of all of our heroes, she was the most overwhelmed by this oppressive society that they were going to be fighting against. So I can see her being restrained in her daily life and more alive as a thief, because then she's rebelling against this society. But just think about that description. She's restrained in her daily life, but alive and energetic when she's a thief. Remind you of anyone? That's right, this looks exactly like what we've seen from the protagonist when he uses his persona. He totally changes personality and behavior. Now, after the second leaked trailer, I theorized that maybe your persona was actually controlling you. But, seeing as how this is going to happen with two characters, something new is crossing my mind. If your persona is a reflection of yourself, and the theme of Persona 5 is going to be rebelling against a society that is trying to keep you restrained, then maybe this crazed look we see in our protagonist's face isn't his evil persona taking over. Maybe that's really him. The real him he's forced to cover up by an oppressive and restrictive society. And when he becomes a thief and fights against this society, he can finally let it loose. This would explain why Anne also acts in the same way, or why Yusuke's appearance completely changes when his persona is unleashed. Maybe your personas coming out aren't just you summoning forth your power, maybe it's a symbol of your inner self bursting out of this restrained society. Maybe this complete change in the appearance and the expression on our protagonist that I have been studying since the very first trailer isn't part of the story, it isn't part of the gameplay, maybe it's just a metaphor. Maybe in the end it is just a symbol of the overall plot of this story, which is your inner self finally coming out and breaking forth from the chains of society. As always, I have no idea what the answer is, but it's fun to speculate, so let me know in the comments down below what you think about these leaks and if they've caused you to develop any new theories. And also make sure to click on these links to check out all the other theories that I've done about the Persona 5 trailers. Also, if you love Persona, but also love everything else from the world of geekery, whether it be video games, comic books, or movies, then click that subscribe button and share these videos all across the net. It really helps me out whenever you share one of my videos, and I appreciate it so much. So thanks again, Persona fans, and I'll see you when the next trailer comes out.